posed to flat earthers as to why a ship's hull disappears over the horizon. If you are asking because you are sincerely open to hearing responses, then I, and no doubt many others, will happily oblige. The answer is actually incredibly simple. The hulls of ships do not really disappear over the horizon at all, and thus this is no proof of curvature. It is merely a function of perception, an effect of the limitations of the naked eye. The question of a ship's hulls disappearing over the horizon is actually one of the most common objections raised when people first react to the idea of geocentricity, and so it only follows that within the increasingly expanding flat Earth research community, it is one that has been thoroughly examined and tested firsthand, many, many times now. This is supposed to be the essence of true legitimate science, is it not? The overwhelming evidence in support of this answer to your question has already been widely available for your perusal in countless videos easily found on YouTube, but of course, you have to be willing to look at them yourself. I would say this in itself is the most crucial question, because if anyone is to throw out questions and proofs against the idea which challenges their currently held paradigm, but then is completely unwilling to even look at any evidence which might suggest something to the contrary, then how sincere can we say such a person truly is in their quest to know the truth? The real irony is that these kinds of dismissive, knee-jerk reactions are actually incredibly similar to the kinds of reactions creationists are so used to encountering by people who find it ridiculous that anyone would dare question the, quote, scientific facts of evolution. How many times, over the many years which you've worked to expose the blatant lie of Darwinism, have you heard people smugly ask you a question like, so how do you explain the evolution we have clearly seen take place with the finches on the Galapagos Islands? They too will almost inevitably smirk as they ask this, believing the proofs they were taught through secular institutions to be utterly undeniable, and they completely assume that as a young Earth creationist you couldn't possibly have any kind of reasonable explanation for such a thing. Their arrogant confidence in that which mainstream pseudoscience has taught them all too often blinds them from even looking at anything contrary to their own belief system. That is not the attitude of true science. That is not what you have spent so many years of your own life advocating and exhorting people to do, both within the body of Christ and outside of it. You have fervently called people to have the audacity to ask if the things written in the Bible, thousands of years ago, could actually be more accurate than what countless modern scientists, educational institutions, and modern research claims to be established fact. You have lived your own life as an example of what it means to ignore the mockery and slander of those who have surrendered themselves to the dogma of humanistic scientism, while rejecting the scriptures and our own God-given ability to question and reason for ourselves. It is indeed ironic, to a most staggering degree, that at this stage you seem quite unaware of how so many people who have stumbled into looking into the evidence of a flat, stationary world have wound up seeing the lie of evolution for what it is as a result. I heard you state that you believe that all of this flat earth nonsense was probably contrived by some group of atheists in order to try and make Christians look stupid. But again, most ironically, you do not seem to comprehend just how many people now whom through looking through the flat earth issue have gone from being card-carrying atheists to believers in a creator. How do you dismiss such fruit and deride it as somehow being the result of more satanic lies? Do you now believe that people should be more wary of looking stupid in the eyes of the world than they should be in researching, questioning, and simply wanting proof of what mainstream science says? Do you realize just how much of the entire theory of evolution is completely dependent upon the premise of there being an ever-expanding, virtually infinite universe? Do you realize that the monolithically accepted theory of gravity is not merely a concept and set of equations which propose to explain why things fall, or how heavenly bodies orbit around each other, etc., but actually is provided as the base explanation for how everything slowly pulled itself together after the Big Bang? In other words, gravity itself is ultimately a thoroughly evolutionary concept. Do you understand that the official explanation for practically everything we supposedly know about planets, stars, moons, comets, asteroids, and on, is all built around fitting into the model of cosmic evolution? Everything up there in that region we call outer space is explained in terms of how it created itself, is currently transferring energy and inertia, and will eventually burn out or die. It's all about evolution, all about cycles, all about removing the creator from the equation entirely. And so from that standpoint, I would think that you would at least be able to appreciate the motivations and to sympathize with the hearts of so many of these people whom so far you've only saw fit to ridicule. I would think that at least you would look a little further into the reasons behind this sudden and bizarre phenomenon that has taken place over this past year, whereby suddenly so many thousands of people are entertaining an idea which is scoffed at so vigorously by the same authorities which claim that we all came from a massive cosmic accident. I would think that you, of all people, would at least be more sensitive to those who are ultimately really only practicing that which you yourself have boldly preached for decades. To dare to think it possible that something so universally established in our sacred textbooks and universities and government-funded institutions could maybe, just maybe, be telling us something that is in fact a lie which flies in the face of what God says. I would think you wouldn't be so quick to malign such a thing, considering the very calling that God has put upon your own life. Because the bottom line is, there are many, many of us whose love for the truth has brought us to this very place, where we are actually willing to